For many people who play video games, the changing of the seasons is often not signaled by the leaves falling or the weather changing, especially if you live in a city like LA like me, but by the seasonal Steam sales that roll around every quarter of the year. In these sales, we see games that are overwhelmingly raved about go on sale for as much as 90% off, some games costing less than $5 for a great experience. And for many of us, we can't help but pick up a few games almost every time these seasonal sales come by as more games release. But more often than not, this leads to us buying more games than completing them, enthusiastically building a huge Steam library, then checking off the games we bought in previous sales. In this modern culture of gaming, we feel the need to collect these games we know are good, but we don't even have the time or energy to get to them. It's a race against the clock and ourselves as we've grown to be our biggest enemy when tackling the backlog. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Anna. I'm a variety gamer who's been gaming for over 20 years. Today's video I feel like is going to be a little bit more personal, probably full of personal anecdotes compared to my recently uploaded videos. So how today's topic came about was kind of a follow-up from last video where I got this comment that reads, I really resonate with the fact that sometimes picking a new game tends to kind of feel like a chore now. I have well over 100 games in my backlog and I know most of them are really good, but another factor that I would consider in making me feel that games are not as enjoyable right now is having paralysis analysis when choosing my next game. I have to check the reviews online, videos, and all of that just to check that I'll enjoy the game and not waste the little time I have now to enjoy my hobby of video games. It's hard to get out of that mindset, but I'm doing the best I can now. I've also been talking about my backlog and what I've been playing recently on like Instagram and TikTok. By the way, if you don't follow me there, I've been uploading almost every single day, so definitely give a follow because I post a lot about the games I've been playing. So at the beginning of the month, I kind of shared just like what I plan to play through in the next 2 months. And then this week, I've also posted a bunch of videos talking about games that I recommend getting on Steam since the spring sale is going on right now. And I'm getting certain comments that just like have the sentiment of buying all these games and not really getting to them. So I see one that says, buy 10 games, played none of them. This top comment that reads, looking at my Steam library now is my top Steam game. Time to add games I will never play to my library. Watching this as if I don't have 50 games I haven't touched in my library already. Okay, but how do I buy the free time to play everything, and is that on sale? And I also posted a video that opens up with me saying I finished nearly 50 single player games in the last 3 years or so, and I got this comment that reads, this is why I quit playing single player video games, all these sweats. So obviously the problem of having all these games in your library and wanting to play all these great games on sale but not actually having the motivation, the dedication, or the time to play is a very common problem amongst gamers and something that I used to struggle with. And just in general, I do pretty often get comments asking me, how do you have so much time to game? How do you have so much time to get through all these single player games and get through your backlog? If I were to give you a real answer, it's 1, be unemployed, and then 2, be a content creator. I guess the first answer only applies for the last 3 months though. You know, I've been only unemployed since the end of last year, so I was still getting through a lot of my backlog before that. And then the second answer, I feel like when you're content pilled, that gives you an extra motivation to do a lot more things than you think. Like I would say that is my single biggest motivator to get through my backlog and play more games. It's definitely because I can create content out of it. So in other words, I only really started gaming a lot after I commodified my gaming experience from hobby to content for consumption. But it wasn't always like this. When I think back to like 2020 when COVID hit and everybody had to quarantine, my gaming habits were very different from now. You know, I was in Discord a lot playing multiplayer games. Valorant beta just had come out, so I was playing lots of Valorant with my friends online. And like many other gamers who use Discord, I was in a Discord voice chat like every single night pretty much during quarantine because that was how I socially interacted with my friends. It was always just like sitting in a Discord server and waiting for someone to show up. Or if I wanted to play single player games, I was in Discord with my friends streaming it to them so they could watch what I was playing. And on average, I think I finished less than like 5 games a year before I started getting really serious with gaming content at the end of 2022. If you look at my old YouTube videos, that kind of represents that era for me, where I was just like playing a lot of Animal Crossing, and that was like the single game that I was like super obsessed with and was only playing for like half the year. When I think about today's gaming habits that I have, it's totally different. I'm never really in Discord anymore. I don't really sit in a voice chat waiting for someone to join. I don't join servers as much anymore when I see people online. And I'm never really streaming my games anymore in Discord because when I play a game, I'm often capturing it for content. I never really play multiplayer games anymore, so games like Valorant really like fell off for me. And I never really replay games or stick to a game for too long because I'm constantly trying to get through my backlog and play the next thing that's on my list. So when I think about how I used to game before versus now, it is a little sad when I think about it. The way you can also think about it is it was a trade-off that I was willing to make where, you know, if I wanted to get through my backlog, I was giving up a lot of social interaction, and I feel like now I don't really have the time or mental capacity to also play multiplayer games with friends on top of all the gaming that I already do for single player games and also for capturing content. At the same time though, I am like following my passion of playing more games and also being a gaming content creator, so this was a trade-off that I thought was valuable and was worth taking. To summarize, my gaming habits have really adapted based on what I value and the trade-offs I was willing to make, and I think this is actually gaming as an adult in a nutshell. You know, when we first learned about the term opportunity cost, it was probably in your first economics class, and this was a term that just existed in our textbooks at first. Just to refresh on what opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. So it's basically the cost of choosing one option over the other. And when I first learned about this term, I was really young, I was a teenager, and it felt like this term really didn't apply, or I didn't really conceptually care about this term at all. For example, I was a complete degenerate some summers when I was in high school. I would basically wake up at around 4 or 5 p.m. and then play MapleStory throughout the entire day and go to bed at like 9 a.m. and I would pretty much rinse and repeat that for the entire summer because I felt like I didn't really have a lot of friends to hang out with during the summers in real life, so I just wanted to be on MapleStory. I didn't care about exercising that much. I was not good at sports. I felt like I wasn't really missing out on anything, wasting away my summers like that because I was just having fun gaming online. But as we all grow up, we became painfully aware of how opportunity cost applies to our life. When I got my first job out of college, I was constantly thinking about how much time I was losing just commuting back and forth to the office every day. I would think about like, man, I would have so much time to like exercise or cook meals for myself or just like have free time to like play video games and not be so tired. When I was in school, I would constantly think about like, okay, should I go out with friends today or should I spend that time studying or working? I even think about like the small everyday decisions that I make now, such as like deciding to get a little sweet treat every week instead of using that money to save for something else. And obviously the concept of opportunity cost applies to gaming as a hobby as well. Getting through a gaming backlog and opportunity costs are basically two sides of the same coin. And we're constantly weighing trade-offs when it comes to deciding to game. Do I feel like playing a single player game tonight, or do I feel like playing a multiplayer game? Or in other words, do I feel like playing a game alone or with friends or with strangers online? Do I feel like playing a new game today, or do I want to play a game that I know I like that I previously played before? Do I want to like build skills in a game? So for example, do I want to get better at Street Fighter or like another fighting game? Or do I feel like playing something casual like a visual novel where skill doesn't really apply to the gameplay at all? And then there's also, do I want to spend my time gaming or do something completely different? And then there's that question that comment previously brought up of, what if I play something that I don't really enjoy and waste my precious free time? And then there's obviously the trade-off of actually spending money on these games that are pretty expensive now. A AAA game can cost upwards to $70. When I think about the trade-offs that I often think about when it comes to my hobby of playing video games, like I mentioned before, I chose to give up gaming as like a social hobby. So this was foregoing multiplayer games, playing with friends, for the sake of playing as many single player games that also doubles as content. I also kind of feel like this was also a mental trade-off, but I basically had this small business that I was running before I started getting serious with gaming content creation, and that was like my big COVID hobby that I was really serious about. And although I don't think it would be impossible to get back into it with the time I have now, I think it's more of like a mental capacity thing where I don't really feel like my heart or mind is really into it. I felt like I couldn't also make gaming content on top of running a small business. I felt like this trade-off I was willing to take just because I felt like gaming was just a bigger passion of mine. And I think the whole reason why I spend so much time playing single player games in general is because if you guys have watched Daryl Talks Games video series on his backlog, I think he actually words it in a really good way where the reason why he plays a lot of like story-based games or like single player games is because he's looking for that man moment where it's like that meme of the horse looking out onto the beach and the caption is just like, man. And I think that's definitely what I'm chasing towards, the high that I'm always looking for when I play like a story game, because I want to be like blown away, right? Looking for those like super memorable moments in these gaming experiences where I'm just like, oh, this is the moment. This is the moment where I feel like they were just absolutely cooking and makes the game worth it. Anyway, these trade-offs and in turn my values when it comes to how I want to spend my time gaming actually looks really different from, for example, my partner and how he games. So he is completely opposite from me, where he plays only like 3 games a year. These are World of Warcraft, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and a fighting game like Guilty Gear Strive. He plays a lot of World of Warcraft because it is like his social game where he, you know, has all these friends to play with, he has his guild to play with, and he loves raiding and just being on Discord with friends playing WoW together. Fighting games and Super Smash Bros. Melee, he sees this as games where he can really actively build a skill, like he can get better at fighting games and go compete and just like get better as a player. And I actually asked him before scripting this video, I just went up to him and I'm like, do you think that you don't really spend time playing other games or playing new games or single player games because you're not like really working towards something, because that's just the type of player he is? And he was like, more or less, yeah, I want to be playing games like fighting games because I can invest my time into it and build towards something, build my skills, and then have real results come out of that. And then when he's not playing fighting games, he can also draw a lot of value out of playing something like World of Warcraft because he's getting closer to his friends, he's having a lot of social interaction and having a lot of fun just like playing with other people. And that social interaction is more valuable to him than, let's say, trying out a new single player game. And I actually realized I have a lot of friends who think like this, probably because I hang out with like a lot of fighting game players and people who are into esports, but I know so many people who rather just spend their time working on a skill or working on getting better at a game such as like Melee or Valorant, for example, because they just rather spend that time getting tangible results of getting better at a game rather than spend that time playing like a single player game, for example, that they will only play through once. I know many friends who have come up to me and be like, you know, I should really get through these single player games, but then, you know, I'll see all my friends playing League one night in Discord and I can't help but want to join them because I see them all playing together. So that's how I kind of leave my backlog untouched. And then I just have a lot of friends who just have a ton of hobbies on top of gaming, like they rather read or watch movies. I think a lot of gamers that I personally am friends with have many hobbies outside of gaming, and that's only one of the many things that make up who they are. So to summarize and bring all this together, we have a tough time getting through our backlog because we are constantly weighing the opportunity cost of gaming as a hobby that only becomes more acute as we grow up and we have more responsibilities. I know I personally feel this more now than ever because I'm 30 years old now. I feel like I'm constantly thinking about my own internal clock and whether I will eventually have to give up gaming as a whole once I think about things like marriage and kids. And not to make this like super morbid, but I think about my own mortality a lot more once I turn 30 because I think about things like, do I want to spend majority of my time spent gaming, or should I think about doing other things with the limited time I have in this life? But then I go back and I'm like, but I should be spending my time doing something that I really love, even if it's not like super exciting or super grand all the time. In terms of time spent, gaming can be a high investment hobby, especially if you're playing something like a 100-hour plus game, which means the cost can be high as well. And we're not only stressed about the time lost getting through the backlog, but paradoxically, we're stressed that we're not getting through the backlog at all. All of that is to say, don't beat yourself up too much for your ever-growing Steam library with this fact in mind. Okay, so getting back to that question of what prompted this video in the first place, you're probably like, okay, Anna, we get it. We suck at getting through our backlog, but I want to get better at it. How do I do that? So this is my advice on how to start making progress on your backlog. And this is obviously personal experience from a 30-year-old gaming content creator. All of the advice that I'm about to give boils down to the basic idea. You want to maximize the value out of the gaming experience to offset the opportunity cost. So first, I would say figure out the environment for you to really enjoy gaming. You know, people always talk about get really cozy cozy, get a blanket, get on the couch, have some snacks. But I would also think about things like, do you want to play games in the same room as your partner, or in Discord with friends, or with your roommate? For example, I just beat Bomb Rush Cyberpunk this week, and I realized that I really enjoyed playing this in the same room as my partner because he thought it was really cool and it reminded him of like nostalgic Tony Hawk games. So having that shared experience together, even though I was doing all the gaming and he was just watching, made it so it only took me a week for me to beat this game because I was just like having so much fun playing it in the same room together. Also think about what time it fits best with your schedule. This is kind of silly, but I am a chronic napper. I take so many naps. I love to sleep during the day, and it's actually kind of a problem. You know how there's all-nighters? All-dayers is like a big deal for me. So because I want to get better at not napping through the day, sometimes I will game during the hours that I know I will get really tired and want to nap. Because gaming during these hours prevents me from napping, I actually think it's like really valuable for me in that way because I want to stop napping throughout the day. So the fact that games can prevent me from napping, or also like going on my phone chronically and doom scrolling, is like a huge plus for me. I would also say start small and smart. Maybe when you're just starting out, play shorter games on your backlog just to gain some momentum. I use howlongtobeat.com all the time just to guess how many days this game is going to take to beat, and then play the games that you'll have confidence to enjoy. Don't just play games that other people are telling you to play if it's not really up your alley. Don't just play Baldur's Gate 3 because everybody is telling you to play it if you don't like turn-based games. And remember, any progress is progress. I actually only averaged around like 2 hours of gaming every time I booted it up when I was working a 9-to-5 job. And those hours obviously really stacked up because if you look at my profile, you can just see how many games I've been in the last 3 years. I would also say switch up the genres just to keep it refreshing. I often play very different games one after the others. So for example, last week I beat 1000 Times Resist, which is a pretty sad and heavy game about like generational trauma and just like has really depressing themes. And then this week I beat Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which is a skate game with like really cool visuals and just like really casual gameplay. And then finally, I would say have an extra motivator. So my extra motivator is obviously content creation and being able to create content out of all the games that I play. If you're thinking about content creation, it also doesn't need to be super complicated. You know, I've seen so many people just post really funny clips of like them playing Monster Hunter Wilds this month. They're not speaking or have a camera in those clips. They just post them for fun. And that could be like your extra motivator, just posting silly clips online. A fun way to also have an extra motivator could also be like creating a list or a journal or a diary of all the games that you played. What I do is pretty much I write down the date I started a game, when I finished it, their grade, and then I write like a small blurb, and I have a huge record of all the games I've been in the last like 3 years or so just doing this. And it's really motivating just looking at that list to see how the list has really grown over the past couple years. You can also have like an accountability buddy. I think this would be fun if you wanted to talk about certain games together with your friends. So maybe just like ask a friend if they wanted to play a game at the same time as you did. But yeah, that's the best advice that I can give when it comes to approaching the backlog. Again, I don't think you need to be super stressed over this, and remember, at the end of the day, it's all for fun. So to finish off this video, I wanted to give you guys a little look into my backlog of what I'm planning to play next. So I want to definitely finish the main storyline for Monster Hunter Wilds soon. I plan to start playing Yakuza 0 today. Still need to finish about like half of Mirror's Edge. I'm about like 70 hours into Metaphor Refantasio, so I'm gonna play that next month. And then when Clair Obscur Expedition 33 comes out, I will definitely be playing that. And then I also have a separate backlog list of just all the games that I have on Steam to play that I just posted a video on that you can go watch there to see all the other games on my backlog. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. If you wanted to share your list of games in your backlog or any advice when it comes to completing the backlog that you want to share, please share them in the comments below. I would love to read them, and I'm sure other people would appreciate the advice as well. And again, I'm going to be posting a lot about the games that I'm planning to play next on like my TikTok and Instagram, so be sure to follow me there. So I will see you in the next video, and thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.